I'm Marianne Leffel. This is Your Town. Welcome back. Today we're talking about transportation, a very, very important part of our infrastructure. My guest for this segment is Mr. Michael LaPier, who is the Executive Director of the Monterey Regional Airport. So Michael, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So, we got a lot going on at that airport.
We do.
You got a mighty little staff just working away.
We do. We do have a lot to do, but that's part of the fun of it. Is I think everyone on my staff enjoys making things happen, and that's one of the things that I've always wanted to do in my career, is make sure that the airport is part of the community and serves the community well. And I think we're accomplishing that at Monterey Regional.
So I think I have to brag on you and the staff, but I want to go back a little bit when the airport was able to secure around $52 million of federal aviation money to do a runway safety improvement project. And at the time there was some talk about, well, it's really not needed and on and on. But it was mandated by Congress.
Correct.
And the money, our staff was able to be shovel ready at the end of the, at the beginning of the recession, and get their project in line and be ready to go. And I think that was so important. And about a few weeks ago, there was an incident at Burbank where a plane slid off the end of the runway, and it was that crushable concrete, as I understand it, that allowed that plane to stop and not go through the fence and out into where vehicles were.
Right, exactly, and that's what the airport was able to accomplish. And the fact that, it's important to note that of that $52 million, about 90% of that came from the federal government through the grant program that we participate in. So it's not just the planning, it's positioning the project as well. Now, FAA did say nationally that all runway safety areas had to be up to standards. So the opportunity for the airport was to have the design ready and position the project so that it was grant eligible. And the staff at that time did a great job of doing that, to be able to bring in $52 million to ensure or to enhance the safety at the airport is a strong get for the community and for the airport. And you're right, you can look around the country and you can see evidence of that, and the most recent was in Burbank. And it's good to have that. That could have been much, much, much worse had that runway safety area not been enhanced.
It's kind of like having an insurance policy. You don't even think about it until you need it.
Right, exactly.
And hopefully we'll never need it. That would be the best case scenario, but if ever we do need it, it is there, and it's proven to work time and time again now, every place that it's been installed.
Very true. Even during the most recent presidential elections a couple of years ago, one of the candidates' aircraft slid off the runway at Boston and used that same project or that same product to stop the airplane. Otherwise, it was in the harbor, and that would have been a disastrous thing to happen, obviously, for anyone. So you see that on a regular basis, and that doesn't mean that that aircraft aren't safe. It just means that when they have a problem, the airport's the safety net, and you see that building, and it's great to have that at our airport.
So speaking about safety, now there's something new that's been mandated, and that is that the existing terminal is too close to the center line of the taxiway.
Correct.
And as larger planes come in, that becomes increasingly apparent, even to people like me that don't have much concept of space. So along that line, the airport's been told that it needs to fix the problem, because it is a problem. And I read all this airport stuff all the time, and I see day in and day out, increasingly, where one plane clips another plane. And what it doesn't hurt any people, but it takes two planes out of existence for a while they get safety checked and, and that sort of thing. So no one wants that.
No.
So in keeping with that, you and your staff have been working for, what, 4 years now?
Over 4 years, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Things just don't happen overnight.
No, they don't.
But steadily building up the plans for and the best way to strategically accomplish the fix of the location of
Right.
the terminal.
Right. It's a little bit of a puzzle, and the way we look at it, what the process that we're going through, that hopefully we're soon to finish, is called the master planning process, and it looks at the facility, looks at its current status, looks at what the future should be for the airport if it grows. So we look at forecasting. Then we look at things like safety as well. And this all started because, as you said, FAA said Monterey needed to address this safety concern in the terminal area as it relates to its proximity to the center line of the taxiway. So in order to do that, we had to look at the entire airport and look at the components of the airport and figure out where things needed to go so we could address that one issue of terminal proximity to center line of the taxiway. And if you've ever been to Monterey Regional Airport, you know you can't just pick up the building and move it back. There's a lot of elevation immediately behind the terminal building, which is kind of fun to have, but it does limit your ability. So we can't move the terminal back to give us that additional safety net that FAA is now requiring. So we have to look at what other strategies could be employed. And one of those that we've considered and presented to the board is that the master plan process, which has us moving components around the airport so that we can move the terminal building to a new location and provide that safety clearance between taxiway and terminal building that FAA is telling us we need.
So it makes sense.
Yeah, it does, but it's not just as simple as one quick move. Not on our airport. We're a pretty constricted little airport in terms of our land and our uses. We have various components of the industry that we need to serve, from general aviation to corporate aircraft to commercial aircraft. And we want to make sure that we serve all of those well, because that's our mandate and that's why we are an airport. So in order to do that, we have to touch every component to make sure that what we have at the airport is adequate to meet the demand, not just for the terminal, but for every component that we serve.
Well, I know, because I try to read everything that you give me. I think it's important that people understand that the airport was formed in 1941, and there was an airport there before that. That was just when the legislation came to make it the Monterey Peninsula Airport District. So when you look at where housing is around the airport, and anybody can look at any of those houses, and I would say that there are very few of those houses that were built before 1941.
Very true.
So when you have then where a neighborhood has moved into the airspace, so to speak, it becomes an issue of trying to be a good neighbor.
Right.
And obviously the people who bought in 1942 or 43 or 45 are gone for the most part, and someone else is in that house, maybe the third or fourth person, and they don't realize that the airport was there first.
True.
So I think it's a constant push-pull, and the airport's done, I think, an excellent job of soundproofing the houses that were along the Monterey side with the Oak Knoll neighborhood in that area. And, of course, all the people who are at the east end of the airport were all in houses that were built after 1980, and they've all signed an easement, understanding that they're in a landing pattern. So our neighbors on I'm trying to figure out geographic here, that would be the south side?
Correct.
Are commercial properties.
Right.
And for the most part, we have absolutely no issues with them, and they have none with the airport.
That's right.
I don't think in my 8.5 or 9 years on the board, I've heard one peep out of anybody along Garden Road.
Right.
So I know there's some movement that is hoping to have apartments along that corridor. But from an airport standpoint, in an airport that's growing to serve the region that it serves, it just doesn't seem to make sense to have housing butting up against an airport property.
No, you're exactly right. And, you know, you have to start with the premise that an airport makes noise. I've never seen an airplane and never will see an airplane that's totally silent.
And it makes it early in the morning.
And it doesn't make it early in the morning because if you want to go from the West Coast to the East Coast, that's when you start your travel. So we inherently will continue to always make noise. The strategy behind airports is that you don't put, to the best of your ability, don't put residential development around an airport. For obvious reasons. People like to sleep. I like to sleep. And if an aircraft fires up its engines at 5:30 in the morning and I'm right next door, it's going to wake me up. And, you know, that irritates people. We can't do anything about that. We have to conduct commerce. We have to be an airport. That's our charge. So it's a zoning issue. It's a planning issue. The airport board several years ago spent almost $20 million to over-insulate and soundproof houses that were built after the airport was there. They did that in order to try to improve its compatibility, the airport's compatibility with the neighborhood. To do that again on Garden Road, to recreate that same situation, it seems wrong-headed. It seems wrong that we would take that step to put additional residential around an airport that you know is going to generate noise. We understand as an airport, we understand as staff that the community needs housing, that there is a need for segments of housing on the peninsula or near the peninsula. We say to those that are planning and those zoners, don't put it next to the airport where you know it's going to be a problem. We would strongly support putting it elsewhere in the community, just not next to the airport, because I think that's disadvantageous to those that would move there, to those that would have to live there, particularly if it's affordable housing. That's disadvantageous to them and just a wrong step in a planning process or in a zoning process. So we're working hard with planning, the city, so that we help them understand that that would be a mistake. And we'll happily help them find places in the community where it might work better from the airport standpoint.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things, and it's a current hot topic is affordable and workforce housing. And I have certainly been at the forefront of that for the last 20 or 25 years myself. I think it's so important. But I also think there's a place for everything, and I just don't think that's the place to put people into housing. And I might set the policy to put people into that housing, but I'll guarantee you I would never move into it.
Yeah.
So I have to look at, is it a place that I would move into? And if it isn't, then I should question the policy that I'm setting. So.
No, exactly right. And, you know, there's a social justice issue here. If you wouldn't live there, then why would you ask others to? And why would you build houses that are the only houses attainable for certain segments of the community in places where you wouldn't want to live yourself? And that's the social justice side of the argument that really comes into play or should come into play when you're planning and you're zoning around what you know is a noise generator, and that's the airport.
Yeah, no, totally. So anyway, I needed to get that off my chest.
I'm glad you did, because it is an important topic on many, many levels for this community.
I think it's also in almost direct conflict with the last 4 years of strategic master planning that the airport has been going through with the community. Never once in any of those community forums did anybody ever say, why don't we just put a whole bunch of housing on the other side of the airport?
No, you're right.
And assuming that the airport will move forward in the next couple of years with moving the terminal and doing the right thing that it has to do for the community, that's going to be a lot of noise also.
It will be.
And it's just, it's just setting everybody up for conflict and for ultimate bad feelings.
Yeah, we can only do so much as an airport to attempt to be as compatible as possible. We have to rely on others to understand that we are a noise generator and to plan appropriately around it. And that's the effort that's underway right now, is to help them plan appropriately.
Yeah, well, we'll keep working at it.
Yeah,
huh?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And and along the line, in an earlier segment, you and I were talking about the new flights coming in. That also is, you're listening to the community. You're saying, okay, you asked for these flights for these destinations. We have delivered them. But with that comes increased noise, increased traffic. And so it continues to compound, and you cannot have progress on one side and then be knocking it down on the other side.
No, exactly. It starts at using the product that you've asked for, that we've delivered as the airport, and the strong community effort behind that new service, attracting that new service. We have to use it or we will lose it. It's a very mobile asset the airline can put anywhere. Recognizing that, this is something that the community asked the airport to accomplish and worked with the airport to accomplish. So using it is important, but understanding that with that additional service does come some consequence as well. And that's increased noise at the airport, but it's increased vibrance and commerce through the airport, which helps the local economy. So it's a give and take that you have between the airport as a noise generator and an economic development tool, and community planning, and understanding that this is an asset that benefits the community, and we need to take steps to make sure that as it grows, which the community has said it wants us to grow, that we protect that asset as well.
Well, Michael, I think you're doing a great job. Your staff is stellar.
Thank you.
They're dedicated and they're there for the right reason, which is really good. Obviously, the airlines are loving the airport and the community right now, which is great. And the Federal Aviation people seem to be pretty fond of the airport. So over the last 10 years, I don't think anything's been declined that's been requested. So a work in progress, I know.
Always.
And the spigot can always shut off. But right now, our community really does get its share or more of the dollars that are allocated, especially to airports our size.
We do quite well and have done quite well for some time. It's an easy airport to sell in the grant process. But one point I want to make is that these are not tax dollars that we're using. So it's not off of your federal tax dollar. This is a user fee that's assessed to those that use the aviation system. If you never fly or you never buy a gallon of fuel at the airport, you don't contribute to this. But the money's there for a specific purpose. Its intended purpose is to enhance and improve safety and compatibility and capacity of airports. And we play well in that sandbox, if you will, with the folks at FAA. They like our airport. We do our homework behind what we ask, and always have and always will. It's not just an ask to build something just to build something. It's an ask to build something, help us build something that's truly needed in the community and at the airport.
Terrific. Thank you so much. So now you know a little bit more about the Monterey Regional Airport and a little bit more about transportation in our region. Don't not watch this show, because you never know who we're going to talk to.